The line clicked. Then the host spoke, and her words sent a chill through India's entire being. You are stuck in a wrong turn, but God doesn't want you to find the road back just yet. There will be a collision, and He needs you there for now. There was a pause, a deep inhale. Then, I urge you not to turn around. Continue the road you've been driving. The divine route will make sense later. Goodbye. Click. Silence. Then, faintly, she heard the host whisper to her team. That was intense. That was the first time I envisioned a death. I need a minute. India hadn't been sleeping well. Nights now came in long stretches of silence. She'd lie in bed with a candle flickering on the dresser, letting the soft hum of her favorite podcast, The Divine Route, settle over her like a weighted blanket. It didn't heal the ache, but it helped her subdue it temporarily. Sometimes, the host's voice said gently, it's not your heart that's broken. It's your spirit, tired of pretending. It doesn't need more. India pressed pause. She sat up, her journal still open in her lap, the poem she'd been trying to write hanging somewhere between her heart and her head. It was about a man she hadn't spoken to in almost a year. A man who looked at her like she was more than just seen, like she was understood. She hadn't told anyone about that night at the Grand Lyric, not even her therapist. It wasn't infidelity, but it wasn't innocent. Her phone buzzed on the couch cushion beside her. Greg. She stared at the message, chewing the inside of her cheek. He always thought about them, but never enough to change. She locked the screen, reached for the remote, pressed play. Divine interventions feel like chaos when you're addicted to control. But what if the disruption is the first form of direction? Her chest tightened. She closed the journal, blew out the candle, and let the room fall into darkness. Across town, Jante was also awake. He sat on the edge of his bed, elbows resting on his knees, phone screen dim in the soft light. Chantal was asleep behind him, one arm flung across the pillow like a child, clinging to dreams. Her phone buzzed hours ago. She said it was her cousin. But cousins don't call at midnight, and you usually don't arrive home soaked in the smell of their cologne. Not unless they're the wrong kind of cousins. He stood slowly, walking into the kitchen, and poured himself a glass of water. Then he opened his notes app, the one where he wrote poems too raw to share. He stared at the words, saved the draft. Then he opened another. He turned off the jazz, returned to the bed, and stared at the ceiling. India and Jante had done nothing wrong, but they weren't even sure what right meant anymore. India met Greg at the restaurant 30 minutes after their scheduled time. It was raining hard, the kind of rain that swallowed roads whole. Her Uber driver had slowed to avoid collisions, carefully navigating through invisible lanes hidden beneath gallons of water. India's umbrella shielded her from the storm, protecting the effort she had made to glam up for Greg despite the tense state of their marriage. She desired to look good for him. Her auburn locks were curled and pinned up, with a few loose tendrils framing her face. She couldn't stop fidgeting with the one loose curl near her temple as Greg stood to pull out her chair and kissed her softly on the cheek. She held all the cards now, the power to keep her marriage or fold it for good. And that alone made her hands quiver slightly as she lifted the cup of water to her lips, delaying her response to his greeting. How have you been? He asked, reaching for the hand that held the glass. It was still damp from condensation. He squeezed it so tight she nearly lost feeling. She looked around the expensive restaurant, distracted by the free-flowing bohemian decor that reminded her of an old jazz club. Greg knew she loved places like this. Did he have a change of heart? She wondered. I've been good, she said finally, returning a light squeeze. Greg searched her eyes intently. She recognized that look. She had given him the same one every morning for years. But now he was looking for the woman he married. And she wasn't sure she could find that woman for him. Not anymore. They sat in silence. Greg stared as if trying to summon the past in her face. She looked back, coldly but patient. It was a strange flip of the script. The tables had turned, and holding the power didn't feel as good as she thought it might. Not for India. The waiter arrived, and India took her time browsing the menu, asking for clarity on different dishes before finally ordering. When the waiter left, Greg reached for her hand again and locked eyes with her. I want you to come home, India, he said softly, eyes misty. India blinked slowly, heart guarded, and waited for him to continue. I've been difficult, I know. You needed my support, and I abandoned you at a time when you needed me the most. I never meant to make you feel tolerated. You're the love of my life. If you come home, I promise there won't be a day where you second guess that again. I swear it, honey. If I come home? She asked, her brow arched so high it nearly kissed her sleek edges. Yes, I need you there. The kids need you there. We're a family, India. Please. He kissed her hand this time, desperate, tender. And if I don't? She asked, voice still. I'll continue to suffer in silence without the woman who holds the biggest piece of my heart. But will you continue to try? I have been trying. No, you've been trying to get me home. That tells me nothing about the progress you've made to fix things that got us here in the first place. Separated on our anniversary. Her tone was cold, but firm. She needed more than sweet words and sentiments. I've been trying to fix this mess. You leaving widened the gap, made it damn near impossible to fix anything, but I have been trying. His eyes held onto hers, still searching, still lost. India didn't respond. She took a bite of her lobster fettuccine and said, if I wrote a poem for you, would that get you back home? He asked sarcastically. You don't write poems, Greg, she said with a smirk. He pulled a folded sheet of paper from his coat pocket and began reading aloud. Her heart stuttered after the first few lines. They were eerily familiar. I always told myself that if I ever met love, I'd wrap my arms around her and never let go. I'd tell her how treasured she was, how her essence could fill a room like no one else. He continued, reading it all. Once he finished, India sat expressionless. No tears, no words, just silence. Let me show you something else, he said, unlocking his phone. He played a video clip, an audience recording from the night India last saw Jante. It showed him catching her eye. Their gaze lingered. Two people standing still while the world around them moved. Greg paused it near the end and zoomed in. Look at how close you are. How you're looking at each other, he whispered. This isn't an ambush, India. I promise. I noticed a change in you 2 years ago. So I did some digging. I found the viral poem. Then I found this. I just want to know, is this why you're pulling away from me? India snickered. The nerve. I can't believe you even noticed when I pulled away. You've ignored my feelings for years. Well, I noticed, he said, and it's been painful. India continued eating in silence. She drank her wine slowly, glancing at the time. When she finished, she collected her things and ordered her Uber. This isn't out of malice, she said softly, almost to herself. I just don't know how to handle this. For years, it had always been the other way around. Her begging him for warmth, for love, for partnership. Now it was him. The desperation on his face was painful. But was it real? Or just competition? As her Uber pulled up, she slipped in her earphones and pressed play on The Divine Route. The host's voice poured into her ears like sacred water. Your wrong turn will take you for granted until they see the light of your final merge shining through you. They'll sense the shift and try to fight for you, but it'll feel wrong because it is. They don't want you, they want to win. Tears welled in India's eyes. She wiped them away before they fell. It wasn't that Jante was right for her. It was that she always knew Greg was wrong for her. How do you say goodbye to someone who was your whole world for 17 years? Jante spent the entire night digging through old purses, laptops, iPads, and anything he could find. It started with a weird post from one of Chantel's Facebook friends. Something cryptic. Chantel had been tagged in it. She hadn't commented or liked it, but she also hadn't responded to any of Jante's calls or texts that day. Every call rang out. Every message remained marked delivered, never read, and her shift had ended over 4 hours ago. By the time he went back to check the post again, it was gone. The friend had blocked him. That was all he needed to unravel. He tore their bedroom apart, yanking open drawers, flipping through laundry baskets, sifting through makeup bags. He was looking for anything: a condom, a receipt, a picture. But all he found were old credit card bills, loose earrings, lip gloss tubes dried shut, junk. He moved to her older devices. That's when he found them: photos, seductive ones, poses in lingerie he'd never even seen before, pictures of her from angles reserved for lovers, intimate snapshots she never sent him. On her laptop, there were photos of Chantel and that Facebook friend together at a restaurant, again at what looked like his home. Jante snapped. He hurled the laptop across the room, then charged into the bedroom and began packing her things. He stuffed suitcases and old purses with her underwear, her makeup, her jackets, shoes, even expensive perfume. He removed her vanity mirror from the dresser, laid it flat on top of the things he put on the porch, then shut the door and latched it so she couldn't get in. His hands trembled, his ears burned, his head throbbed with a rage so volatile it seemed to come from outside of him. He punched the wall over and over until his knuckles stung. All those times she said she was working late, all those sleepovers at her friend's house, all those nights she left Rennie to grab some food. She wasn't working. She wasn't with friends. She was with him. It all made sense now, but not the kind of sense that brought closure. This was the kind of clarity that brought corrosion to the heart, to the soul. Jante knew if she walked through the door right now, the things he'd say would be so lethal they'd never recover. Not as co parents, not as people. He forced himself into a cold shower. He needed to come back to earth, to remember his daughter, his anchor, his reason. After drying off, he tried calling Chantel one more time. No answer. Defeated, he picked up his phone and tapped play on his favorite podcast. He turned the volume up all the way and placed it on the nightstand. The voice of the host filled the room. It's not a question of if they'll leave you, it's a question of when. Or better yet, who will see the shift first and seek more? Because you can't cheat destiny. You think you're the only one in the union who feels it's off? Nah, you're just the only one willing to accept it. The other is just pretending to avoid being alone, which means you're the one who has to bring it to a divine halt. The words hit him like an arrow, not just through the heart, but through the memory of every fight they ever had. Every time she called him clingy, every time he swallowed his gut feelings to keep the peace. They had broken up 100 times, but the habit kept reeling them back in. The comfort of the familiar, the hope that maybe this time will be different. They had a child, a home, at one point, love. He stared up at the framed photo on the wall. It was from her pregnancy photo shoot. They were wearing matching outfits. His hand cupped her belly. Her hand rested gently on his shoulder. Their foreheads were touching, faces so close even light couldn't sneak between them. The romance bled from the picture, the kind of photo people repost with captions like, "Black love is beautiful." But now, was it all a lie? Did she ever really love me? Is Rennie even mine? He hated himself for even thinking about it, but this was what Chantel had done to him and left him doubting everything, even the one person he would have died for without question. The pain pinned him to the mattress. He curled up on his side, clutching a pillow to his chest like it might give him some answer. And somewhere between rage, heartbreak, and exhaustion, Jante finally fell asleep. Still fully dressed, still listening, still searching, alone. Jante woke up before the sun rose, the faint glow of dawn creeping through the half-closed blinds. The podcast had long stopped playing, and the phone had fallen off the nightstand during the night. He didn't remember when he drifted off, only that the ache in his chest was the first thing he felt when his eyes opened. Chantel still hadn't called. No apology, no denial, no explanation, just silence. She must have tried to come home because she took her stuff off the front porch, even left her ring on the rocking chair. He seen it when he went to check on Rennie in the middle of the night. That morning, when he awoke, he sat up slowly, rubbing the sleep from his face. His knuckles were bruised and swollen from the wall he'd punched the night before. Jante moved throughout the apartment like a machine, collecting the last of Chantel's things. The forgotten pair of boots by the front door, the extra toothbrush in the bathroom, the drawer full of receipts and notes with hearts scribbled in purple ink that now felt performative and hollow. He dumped it all into a box and sealed it with tape and pushed it into the hallway. Rennie stirred in her bed, small feet kicking beneath her pink comforter. She mumbled something in her sleep and flipped over, hugging her bear close. Jante paused at the door, watching her breathe. She's what matters now. He made a list in his phone. Find daycare. Call Mally about the job opening. Cancel lease. Buy plane tickets. Move home. Home. Back to the city where he'd grown up in. The city where his mother still lived. Where his agent promised him writing opportunities. Where a Grand Lyric Theater was located. It made sense now. Too much noise and pain lingered in this home. Every room smelled of betrayal. He opened his laptop and started searching for daycare options near his childhood neighborhood. Rennie deserved a fresh start, too. A place where she didn't have to ask why mommy wasn't home or why daddy looked so tired all the time. The folder of Chantel's old photos was still open on the laptop. Lingerie, laughter, her and that man smiling like they'd never once struggled to love each other. Jante shut it click. He wasn't going to drown in this. He wouldn't let himself. He pulled out the one framed picture he kept by his bed, the one from when Rennie was born. Chantel was still in the hospital gown, exhausted but glowing. Jante cradled their newborn daughter in his arms, smiling like he'd been given the entire world. Maybe that part was real. Maybe it was enough. He put the picture in a box labeled Keep and made himself a promise. No more begging someone to stay. No more searching old phones and praying to be proven wrong. Just Rennie. Just healing. Just forward. By noon, the movers were booked. He'd leave in 2 weeks. Then he looked around his nearly empty apartment. Everything that mattered could fit in 3 boxes and one sleepy little girl's dreams. He picked up Rennie from her nap, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "Daddy's taking us somewhere better." She stirred, looked up with heavy eyes, and smiled. "Are we going to fly?" Jante smiled. "We're going to fly, baby." India had her hands full enough to distract her from the tense dinner she had with Greg a couple of weeks back. Between the full event calendar for the theater, her writing obligations as the lead writer on a hit television show, and the kids, she had barely had time to breathe. This morning, she alternated between the computer, her cell phone, and her iPad. She needed to assist Greg with shopping for the kids' back to school necessities, ensuring she purchased the required items. She had to approve the decor, staffing, and guest list for theater events, as well as review and adjust the budget. The iPad she now held played soothing meditation music to keep her grounded throughout the chaotic day. She found herself falling asleep at the table, her laptop still open and emails pouring in. She hadn't been able to catch her breath all day, and that was how she liked it. Her cell phone lay on the table, open to Greg's text thread. They were communicating about the kids. Truthfully, she had not thought of him. She intentionally avoided thinking about anything related to them. But she understood he didn't have that luxury with a 24 by 12 wedding picture of them nailed to the wall above their marital bed. She told him to get rid of it, but he refused. It seemed he either loved to torture himself or was in denial about the state of their marriage. Either way, he was stuck. She dozed off more than once and woke up 20 minutes past the time she should have left for the open mic night. She rushed around her apartment grabbing programs and devices, stuffing them into her leather briefcase while doing her makeup and getting dressed. She got to the car only to hear her dear 2012 Acura stalling. She turned the key more times than she liked to admit, only to hear the same sound. She would have to call an Uber instead. But once she opened the app, it gave her a 1 hour delay before any driver could arrive. She couldn't afford to be any later. So she made a call to the one person she knew she shouldn't call for this. Within 20 minutes, he was parked next to her dead Acura, blasting Kim with the windows down. She pranced over to the car, briefcase in front of her, embarrassment on her face as he inspected the Acura like it was a deformed horse. She stood quietly by the car, not knowing if she should even enter it. He sensed her hesitation and allowed her to work through it as he stepped out to look under the hood of her car. He wiggled through the coils and large parts like a skilled mechanic. Technical men were always her weakness. His muscles flexed as he took things apart and put them back together. Moments later, he looked up at her and said, "You'll need a new engine." As he closed the hood of her car and smoothly slid over to her, opening his passenger door, she stood there, contemplating. He gestured for her to step inside, politely bowed, and placed a gentle but firm hand on her back to encourage her to move. His eyes pulled her in, said it was okay, that they could handle whatever came next. He waited to close her door. That was different. No matter that she'd make them both late. He awaited her hesitation and made space for it. Once inside, he closed her door and they drove off to the theater. The drive was silent yet loud. She observed everything about him but said nothing. The way his muscles flexed as he worked the steering wheel, the way he exhaled smoothly at every red light, like he took the time to collect his thoughts, the smoothly controlled way he operated the huge pickup truck. No abrupt stops or rushed turns. Every move for him was seamless. He even glanced at her occasionally to confirm she was okay. With a raised brow and head tilt, she would answer with a slight bow of her head. She wasn't sure if it was the way he looked at her or the calm and gentle manner in which he operated his vehicle that made her crave his touch in this moment. She wanted him to handle her like he handled this huge pickup truck. Her thoughts were wandering wildly, and she lowered the window to slightly gather herself. Jante peeked over at her tense posture, briefcase clutched to her torso, both legs crossed, lips tense. He could tell she was nervous to be in such close proximity to him after the last time they met. He put on some smooth jazz to relax her. She had rolled the window down and had her face halfway out. Her locks whipped violently as the wind tried to grab them. The scent of her shampoo filled the car, vanilla and caramel with a hint of cocoa. The curled ends of her locks were grazing the middle of her back, and she slightly swayed to allow them to collect onto her shoulder. The way she shimmied to make them flow back onto her delicate shoulder made her coat drop slightly, and her dress strap was revealed. He noticed the smell coming off her skin, her hair, her hands. Noticed the smooth caramel matte complexion of her shoulder and the slight shimmy that made her skin shimmer under the car light. He approached a red light and exhaled to collect himself. Whenever he heard her grunt, which she did every time a car got too close, he would gaze at her, raise an eyebrow to confirm she was good. She answered with a slight bow of her head. He wanted to talk to her, but didn't know what to say. Maybe he could find the right words after the event, when they had time to comprehend the weight of this moment. They arrived outside the Grand Lyric Theater just as the sky shifted from dusk to ink. The building stood tall and romantic with amber lights pouring from its ornate windows, the laughter of creatives floating in and out like smoke. Jante stepped out and made his way to open India's door before she could reach it for herself. The moment he opened it, she jetted inside the theater and didn't look back, heels clicking faster than her heartbeat and her long coat flowing furiously behind her. She wasn't mad. She was turned on, and she had to get out of his space, fast. He stood outside watching her disappear into the soft light and velvet draped interior. Inside, the familiar buzz of spoken word, stage lights, and scented candles offered a temporary balm to the tension still vibrating in her skin. Her colleagues waved at her from the front row, already mid program. She nodded at them but didn't take her seat. She drifted to the back of the theater instead, near the door, unfocused, distracted. Her phone buzzed. She rolled her eyes and tucked the phone back into her bag without replying. But even as she focused on the mic, the new poet, the raw lines, the tremble in his voice, her thoughts were still in that truck. Still with Jante? Still on the way he exhaled at every red light. Still on the way he waited for her to move, to breathe, to feel safe. He was in the audience for quite some time. She opened her phone to check the performance list. He wasn't on it, but this was open mic night, and the poem was still pretty popular. As the night aged, poets went one by one, filling the air with longing and hope. Toward the end, Jante walks up to the stage, passes by her to get there, and his scent greeted her nostrils. That scent of his lingered longer than it should have. Once on stage, he is staring into her. This stare was deeper than basic eye contact, like he was pushing through all her immediate thoughts and demanding her attention, demanding space in her mind. India stood frozen in the same spot she'd been in since he stepped on stage. Clipboard pressed to her chest, one foot reclined on its heel, eyes fixed on him. Jante walked down from the stage, focused, his stride direct, heading straight toward her. A moment of silence simmered between them until India finally exhaled and asked, "How do you do that?" "Been doing it for years." "This is the second time I've seen you recite something, off the cuff, no pen, no phone notes, nothing?" she asked, wondering if this was something inspired by them or if he was just that good. "How do you think I did it?" "I have no idea," she chuckled, and he joined her. The tension eased. She lowered the clipboard that had been glued to her all night and loosened her arms. Comfort was creeping in, or maybe his warmth was defrosting the part of her that was scared or hesitant. "Let me tell you over dinner," he said, calm, smooth, no nerves. Like he already knew she wouldn't say no. Like something in her face had already invited the offer. She looked around the Grand Lyric Theater for a reason to decline, but all she felt was a quiet, divine yes. "It's just dinner," she finally said. "Just dinner," he repeated, tapping her arm to bring her back to earth, flashing that huge, bright smile and giving her another hint of that rugged, sweet cologne that pulled her in deeper than she should have gone. It was like he could hear her overthinking, and she was, just not in the way she was used to. She stared into his eyes, and a slow smile spread across her lips. They arrived at the restaurant a little after 10. It was a small bohemian style diner just down the street from the theater. They walked there in a calm, easy silence, their footsteps echoing in sync. There was always this silence between them, like during the drive earlier that day and again in the moments after their last meeting nearly a year ago. A silence that felt shared, like they were thinking the same thoughts, like they were speaking to each other in ways the mouth never could. It was the first time India had experienced serene silence in the presence of someone else. I'm starving, Jante said, unrolling his napkin and scooting in. Me too, she replied, catching another whiff of that cologne and sipping her water quickly, trying to wash away the unclean thought pulling in the front of her mind. They both chuckled when they realized they'd ordered the same thing: grilled chicken club sandwich with melted mozzarella, grilled onions, and mushrooms, plus a side of barbecue sauce. While they waited, they lingered in light talk: jobs, kids, creatives they both knew and admired. But once the food was gone, the conversation deepened. Jante leaned in, the soft lamp above them casting a warm glow over his honey-toned skin and drawing out the hazel in his eyes. His muscular arm brushed hers slightly as he inhaled, like he was preparing to confess. India leaned forward, drawn into the moment as though it were written into her hopes, right behind something sacred. I like you, India, he said. His hand melted into hers. She didn't speak, she just nodded, and he understood. Still, he continued. I think this, he gestured between them, is bigger than anything I could put into words. Another nod. I'd love to see where this goes. They stared at each other, pulled by the same current, their eyes locked. Faces moved closer, lips met, breaths synced, hands lingered, thoughts raced. There was no plan to pull away until the waiter dropped off the check. If not for that, there might have been an invitation to go further. India glanced down at her wedding ring, shimmering under the streetlight pouring in through the window. Her vows, her family, her children. She pulled away before the waitress could even walk away. Grabbing her briefcase and coat, she ran out the door. Jante tossed down enough money to cover the bill, then ran after her. She stood on the sidewalk, pacing, heels tapping violently against the cement, breath pushing hard through her nostrils. He didn't approach her right away. He just watched. She was panicking. He raised his hands, signaling surrender. I know, he said softly. This is bad. This is wrong. She blurted out as she stomped in a rhythm that only panic could create. Then it won't happen again, he said calmly, but I won't apologize for it. She stopped pacing, looked the other way. Oh, he said that last time. I'm not sorry, and you shouldn't be either. She turned to him, eyes wide, intense. It only feels this intense because we're in complicated spaces in our lives. How can you be so sure? I read a book about it, she said, then burst into laughter, loud, sharp, almost manic. He stared at her, unsure if she was breaking or releasing. But after a moment, it hit him too. How absurd this all was. And he joined in. What's so funny? He asked, stepping closer. Everything's been horrible. I went out of my marriage. I asked God for a sign, and my car dies. I call my husband for a ride. He doesn't answer. Never even calls me back. So, I call you. And you show up. Then, this happens. I don't even know what to think. He gently took her hand and got even closer. Maybe you're not supposed to think about it. Maybe you're supposed to fall into it. And she did. She let him hold her hand, and even held his in return. Let the moment swallow her whole, like she was a smooth piece of caramel in the mouth of a starving child. You never even told me how you did it, she said, breathlessly. I spoke from the heart. That's where all the verses come from anyway. No notes? She asked. None needed, he said, his eyes on hers, When it's felt, it's remembered. They didn't speak much after that, just held hands for a few quiet moments under the city's breath, street lights flickering like they too were deciding whether to stay on or not. Eventually, Jante walked her to the passenger side of his truck and opened the door. She stepped in quietly, settling her briefcase in her lap, unsure if the buzz in her chest was anxiety or something softer. He got in beside her, started the engine, and let the quiet ride carry them away. The silence was warm, familiar now, a place they both seemed to understand. When they pulled up in front of her apartment building, neither moved right away. You good? He finally asked, eyes still on the windshield. She nodded, hand already on the door handle. I think so. He turned to face her. I meant what I said tonight. She looked back at him, eyes softer than before. I know. He leaned over, kissed her hand. Nothing dramatic, just enough to linger, and whispered, Good night, India. Good night, Jante. She got out slowly, turned once before reaching the door, and offered him a smile. Not one of invitation, but one of understanding. He watched her disappear into the building before exhaling deeply. By the time he pulled into his mother's driveway, the house was dark, except for the porch light she always left on for him. Inside, his daughter was curled up on the couch with a blanket and a book in her lap, fast asleep. He carried her to bed, tucked her in, and kissed her cheek. Then he sat on the edge of the bed, eyes heavy, mind not quite ready to rest. Meanwhile, India stepped into her apartment, dim, quiet, familiar. She poured a glass of water, sat on the couch, and let the silence wrap itself around her like a blanket. That silence followed her upstairs. It wrapped around her shoulders as she showered, slipped into bed, and stared at the ceiling. She was caught in the in between the man she married and the man who made her feel something again, between what felt wrong and what somehow felt more right than anything she'd ever known, between comfort and connection, obligation and desire. Greg had history, but Jante had presence, and presence was something Greg hadn't shown in years. India didn't want to blow up her life for a spark, but what if it wasn't just a spark? What if Jante was the match and she was finally ready to burn? By morning, her mind was no quieter. So she ran, not just to escape the guilt, but to survive the ache of staying stuck. And as her feet hit the pavement, the fog kissed her skin. She knew exactly where she needed to go. Not physically, but emotionally. She needed the divine route. The Divine Route was a podcast known for pulling back the veil on romantic crossroads. Its purpose? To help people figure out if their partner was a wrong turn or their final merge. Controversial, yes, but wildly addictive. Callers phoned in anonymously, their voices filtered, identities protected with fake names. And each week, the host delivered spiritual clarity with a tone so warm, it could make even heartbreak feel holy. India had listened faithfully since her separation from Greg. She often considered calling in herself to confess how meeting Jante had lit a fire inside her that burned brighter than anything she'd ever felt. How somewhere between shared laughter and accidental touches, she'd begun to suspect that Greg was not her final merge after all. She didn't want to admit it out loud. Not yet. On days like today, when the thoughts ran too wild and the temptation to end her marriage felt too real, India didn't reach for the podcast. She ran. Hard. The park near her apartment had become her sanctuary. Mornings here were blanketed in fog, and as the mist hung low over the trees, it cooled her body and quieted her soul. Birds chirped like they were greeting each other, fluttering from tree to tree, kissing petals and branches. The rhythm of her feet striking the pavement and the gentle sway of nature worked better than therapy. She had Tim's Higher on repeat. India wasn't the type who needed a giant playlist to keep going. One song, her song, was enough to push her further, dig deeper. I won't wait for you, she sang under her breath again and again, because she had waited 15 years. 15 years of holding space for a man who barely saw her, who loved her in fragments, who never returned to her fully. India had waited in vain, in hope, in quiet desperation, as so many women do. But she was done now. She stopped running for a moment, stepped to the side of the trail, and caught her breath. Her fingers tapped open Spotify. With one swipe, she was back on the divine route. She ran again. Her body ached. Her legs were fire, but she had to move. If she stopped, anxiety would sit on her chest and shake her until she broke. A caller named Leon was on the line. His voice was layered in a digital filter, but the pain in it was unmistakable. He spoke of heartbreak, how he found out his longtime girlfriend had been cheating, how she left and never looked back, not even for their daughter. She took her things and vanished. I always knew we were misaligned, he said, voice cracking, but the spark, it felt like home. And now I'm stuck, in love with a cold woman who never really loved me. She just wanted my body, and when I asked for more, she found someone else who'd give it to her. The host paused, then gently asked him to pick a number and a letter. Leon did. There was a long moment of silence as she ran it through the system. Then her voice returned, soft and firm. She's a wrong turn. She's felt it for months and decided to follow another flame. So the real question is, do you wait for a love that will only leave you again? We have a daughter, he whispered, and India felt her chest squeeze. I know, the host replied, but your final merge is already in connection with you. Her voice brightened slightly. She's everything you never had in a woman, your puzzle piece, the balm to your scars, and she carries the light that can pull you from this darkness. India slowed down, transfixed. The host's voice lowered into something almost prophetic. Your C gave her heart to. Oh, but I is near. God is preparing her for you, Jay. So prepare yourself for her. Clean out the remnants of this wrong turn. Heal before you rejoin the divine route. Rest. Replenish. God will place you both in the same lane, and it's going to stir your soul. The line cut. India stopped in her tracks. A shiver crawled down her arms. Damn, she's good. Each week, people called back with stories proving the host's vision's true, down to the names, dates, even cities. India sat down in the middle of the path, eyes closed, head tilted to the sky. Give me a sign, she whispered. And, as if summoned by her soul, a butterfly drifted down and landed on the bridge of her nose. She let out a startled breath, frozen in place. Just then, the host's voice echoed in her ears. Call us now if you want to know if you're stuck in a wrong turn or have settled into your final merge. The butterfly lifted off her skin and flew away. She didn't think, she just dialed. The line clicked. Then the host spoke, and her words sent a chill through India's entire being. You are stuck in a wrong turn, but God doesn't want you to find the road back just yet. There will be a collision, and He needs you there for now. There was a pause, a deep inhale. Then, I urge you not to turn around. Continue the road you've been driving. The divine route will make sense later. Goodbye. Click. Silence. Then, faintly, she heard the host whisper to her team. That was intense. That was the first time I envisioned a death. I need a minute. India's heart thudded. Her ears rang. She sat there completely still, legs trembling. A death? A collision? God needs me there? The wind picked up. Leaves rustled. And for the first time in a long time, India felt terrified.
back, but I can't. I wanna leave you behind.